Hi, welcome. My name's Dale McCluskey, and this video is part of my series called Flipping the Script. I'm going to be, once again, talking about the confusion by way of those who identify as balanced dog trainers. Again, talk about the inability to call out the real issue, this playing both sides of the fence when it comes to this idea that training is a learning-based exercise which balanced dog trainers align themselves with, just like force-free dog trainers. Well, here in this video, we're going to hear this attempt to try to, um, you know, resolve issues here. Okay, you're gonna see this type of trying to play both sides of the fence, trying to make certain adjustments. Okay, and I'm gonna talk through this because one thing you don't hear these balanced dog trainers talk about is actually the fact that training is not a learning-based exercise to begin with. Okay, so you're going to hear this type of, I talk about the recent study, okay, that was just put out by Ivan Belanoff, a balanced dog trainer, which triggered off so much, pushback from those identified as force-free, more divisiveness, talking about all the dogs in the study, yelping. And I talk about all the confusion. Again, I encourage you to watch my Flipping the Script series as I go through all of it. But this video here is really a really good video to discuss this whole kind of, I call it like the exemption clauses, right? It's like, except, this, you do it this way, except, well, when this thing starts happening, let's go this way. This whole thing to try to make certain adjustments within the framework of this learning-based ideology, which doesn't actually call out the real issue. It doesn't separate away from it, okay? You remain within the parameters of it, okay, which is a problem. I understand that's why balanced dog trainers are losing their tools, why they're being challenged, because I talk about this whole issue about a process that represents about motivating dogs to respond by way of using treats, using certain motivating agents. This issue about choices, free will, okay, once a relationship problem is underway. And again, that's why I talk about so often in my videos, the parenting example. Once a child has become selfish, the whole issue about free will, about choices as it relates to defining a process, a way forward in which, again, the parent, okay, is going to engage a relationship problem, parental influence, structure, boundaries, but the agent of change itself, okay, by way of defining the relationship, the parental role, and then lining that up in terms of the parenting style itself, in terms of causation. I talk about all of it. So this whole thing about the role of influence, I talk about, the difference between changing a dog's focus, motivating a response, focusing on superficial responses that way, or, intercepting dog's state of mind as control is being expressed. Okay, so there's a major difference here. This is where all the confusion comes from. So I'm going to play some of this video. Now, this is Michael Ellis, who's very, very highly regarded in the dog training world, would identify as a balanced dog trainer. So I'm going to play some of this again under fair usage. Okay, I'm talking about, the real issue here. I'm specific as to, those who identify as balanced dog trainers, the confusion as to the jumping in point, okay? And you're going to hear this whole thing. It's like the exception clause. Okay, we go this way because this is the default setting. Approaching training is a learning-based exercise until, okay, and that's that until, except, for some dogs. And you go in and watch the video on my series, the Jamie Penrith, a balanced dog trainer who's, again, attempting to really push back against the remote collar bans in the UK. Watch the video where he goes on Good Morning Britain, and it just leads up to that challenge moment. Okay, where again the trainer from Dogs Trust says, "Well, hold on here a second. Okay, you're saying about using remote collars, for some dogs that are running out, say, onto the road, but we show that through training we can get a dog to make a different choice. Think about that versus the role of influence, intercepting. But see, balanced dogs, they put themselves into this catch-22 situation. They can't get out of it. So I'm going to play some of this video to respond to, because you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this narrative here.
Cool stuff can happen, right?
And to his discussion of method wars, that's one of the things that is
Pay attention. So he talks about method wars. Okay, talk about dog training wars, right? Method wars, right? It's this whole thing, this almost tribal thing going on. Those who identify as balanced trainers and those who identify as force free. This whole back and forth, but no clarity. No resolution. Again, I profile all these incidents. I go through all of it. You go watch when I went on the Miracle Canines debate. Okay, I connected dots. And the problem here is those who already have identified as balanced dog trainers and force free, they don't like hearing the dots connect because then they have to deal with it. Okay, then they have to actually look at it, and then it brings them into a trade-off situation. In terms of what is a process, what does training represent? I talk about no, it's not a learning-based exercise at all. It takes a path of intervention. I talk about motivating dogs. You don't motivate dogs that way. Getting them to respond when the relationship. This is like motivating a selfish child. Once a child's already selfish, do you honestly believe you can trust those responses when you're jumping in that way as a parent? That's ridiculous. The motivator is the relationship. Okay, it's a social aspect. It's like signing a social contract. You have to think different. Because here's the problem: the dog training world. This is why all the blame shifting on the dogs. Why do you think all the dogs are getting blamed? But goes in this whole thing about balanced dog trainers. This is their default setting, called the 4 quadrants. So they have built off of, all right, this idea that training is a learning-based exercise. But when you build off of, like I talk about, what's the big lie in the dog training world? Well, the big lie is that training is a learning-based exercise once a relationship problem's underway. It's not. Okay, when you motivate dogs to respond this way, you're setting in motion a counterfeit picture within the framework of response for many, many dogs and owners.
Priority for all of us is the idea that most good, effective methodologies that are around consistently for extended periods of time have merit.
See right there, blown. Like they even say that, right? And see, this is where that statement has been around for forever. There's more than one way to train a dog. This is where that comes from. But that doesn't even make sense. I mean, think about it. Is there really more than one way to train a dog? Who's right and who's wrong here? I mean, you have both these groups of trainers, which is unbelievable to me. They can even get away with, calling themselves, dog training experts on both sides, while pretending to offer something different. They're not. They're both tied into. This is why Robert Cabral made a statement recently about, two sides of the coin. It's the same coin. One side's, force free, the other side's balance, but it's the same idea as to what training is, a learning-based exercise. So they're all jumping in the same way. So here you hear Michael Ellis saying, well, they all have merit. No, they don't. In fact, I show that both these groups are wrong. All right. And that's where, this is where trainers don't like hearing this. But then look at all the problems in the dog training world. I mean, these trainers, they can't look at them. If they were to look at them the right way, it would put them into a position which they're already in. So to be in denial changes nothing. Understand, these trainers are all in denial that, they're just pretending like nothing is these things don't all, connect. Well, they do.
They're around because they work. And what we hope to do is sort of proctor an understanding of how that functions.
See right here. So it's like trying to sort it out. Say, well, they all have merit, right? Well, what's the merit part? Training's a learning-based exercise. That's the starting point. And then when again you hear them talk, then when they run into trouble, right, with some dogs, and that's why I talk about, some dogs, right? What dogs? Ask the question. What dogs, create problems? What dogs expose the underbelly? What dogs are causing some of these trainers to get bitten? I profile those situations on my Flipping the Script series. Watch the Tom Davis video, the Danny Wells video. The trainer from I'm from Canada. The trainer from Canada. I can't think of what he calls his training business, but I put those all together for a reason. It sets up blindsided, right? Because they're not approaching it as an intervention. I talk about type of power play that reveals, right, truth, that reveals the state of the mind of a dog in every moment as you're interacting with the dog, because it's a specific type of conversation. I talk about the method itself as being a type of specific conversation that reveals and changes. But those two core ingredients I talk about, influence and control, they have to come in. They're going to come in. They're going to be reconciled, come in through a intentional interaction-based method that speaks the right language. Through learning, that doesn't happen. So it sets up, so these trainers, because they're motivating dogs to respond, they're using treats, they're using motivating agents, those core ingredients aren't there. So it's not taking the path of a power play. So I talk about power play as well. It's not meant to create a war with a dog. You hear some of these trainers out there talking about, choking dogs, strangling dogs. They talk, but because the language of the method isn't right. You understand that when you hear these trainers use certain language, they try to package this, and then they go over to the other side, the dark side, right? They go to the other side. They're not doing a proper audit, all right? And so it creates this problem.
What are the things that underlie that and drive those processes? And then it's frequently your goals and the type of situation and dog you're using that dictate which one of those, or the weaknesses or strengths or weaknesses of any one of those methodologies that's going to suit your situation.
So you're totally wrong. So it's reverse here. It's like, okay, the processes, they all have merit, right? Learning based, all have merit. But when we run into a problem, it could be because of the dog. I talk about this different. No, let's get the process right here first. Then you're not going to run into a problem. Okay, you're not going to be blindsided. And see, the problem is when you run into a problem, usually you're in bad shape already. Okay, when you're dealing with the 1 percentile dogs, as I call them, the dogs that are, you look at the pit bulls and the, shepherds, and it can be any dog. It's like rolling the dice, as with some dogs, but certain breeds are going to generally, are going to require a higher level of social need. Okay, I say social need, high drive dogs, and then equate that to like the parenting example. Some children need a stronger parent. Okay, think about, I always connect the dots here, but understand certain dogs are going to, expose the underbelly. But the problem here is if that's your default setting, if that's your default process, when you get to this point, understand something that's missing here that Ellis isn't really talking about. When you get to that point, if that's your default foundation through learning, and these dogs gain control, what I call the 1 percentile dogs, when you get to that point where you say, oh, now we need to do something different, you're in bad shape. Okay, you may not be able to reverse it, especially if you don't even have the right information. And then, what's their idea of, of something different? Understand, because it's not what I'm talking about. It's not your default setting isn't the right parenting style, so to speak, from the beginning, right? It's going into this permissive bribery-based ideology, and then you deal with these dogs that are at that level. You're in trouble. Okay, you're in trouble. And to think that you're going to reverse it, like, no. Okay, this is the problem. This is the exception clause here. This is where they're trying to work this. It's like a shell game. They're trying to say, okay, we're going to work this out, and you're in trouble. I'll make that very clear.
And the better you understand it, the better you can do that. So just using electronic collar work, all of those methodologies that are extant and are effective have strengths and they have weaknesses.
Now, well, the whole weakness, okay, is the learn. See, and this is the thing. This is a try to, it's like the exception clauses, the fine print, right? It's like saying, oh, they all strength. It's like, that's the whole thing. It's like they can't separate from it. All right, you can't, because that's their whole foundation. Whereas I say, no, training's not a learning-based exercise. Okay, it takes a path of an intervention, takes a path of a intentional interaction-based method. So I would really encourage anyone, again, when you listen to the information balanced dog trainers are putting out there, connect some dots here. I mean, look at the state of the dog training world. There's no accidents or coincidence. It's a train wreck, and trainers getting blindsided. People getting blindsided by certain dogs, the 1 percentile dogs, I call them, to reverse course. Once you get to that level, to reverse course out of it takes the right foundation. Go and watch. I encourage you to watch the podcast by way of Jack Morton. When he brought his dog with Kaiser, it's a great illustration. It's a great example of that 1 percentile dog with the right foundation. Is it easy? No, it can be the most difficult thing, okay? But it's doable. But you hear this, I mean, you're in bad shape, okay? Just understand that the foundation has to be there. I mean, balanced dog training does not represent that. It's just this. You see what's happening here. It's just try to, okay, now we're at this point. Now we're going to try to make this work out. Just like your parenting style, it needs to be set. Okay. When I walk into a situation, okay, the core ingredients are already in place. How I think is set, how I interact is set. Speaking the right language, okay, through I talk about specific, intentional, interaction-based methods. Very specific. This is the only system out there. I developed it. You're not gonna find any other system. So when you hear some of these trainers talk about choking dogs and all this stuff, it's off. Okay, right away something's wrong, right? Because I talk about kinetics, I talk about certain principles, I talk about the role of influence. There's certain principles within the system that's very specific to this system. Okay, the interplay of influence, the interplay of how you're interacting. Okay, you go watch again. I put out lots of video content on my YouTube channel with me interacting with extreme cases. You go watch that. And I have courses too. So again, if you're out there and you're looking around, I want to just put a little plug in. I offer I have 2 online courses that get you to the point of being able to be a trainer of the system. And so again, look around the dog training world. So again, but lots of great information. Check it out. But again, when you talk about balanced dogs, this is a great example as to what I'm talking about in terms of trying to work it out. Thanks for watching.